Well, this just happened, and no, I'm not talking about my shaved head, but I'll get into that later on in the video, but it's actually about a recent integration that Zebec did. Nothing I say is financial advice, however, it's regarding USD1, and more specifically, World Liberty's USD1 stablecoin. For instance, it's now integrating that across its payroll and card suite. Again, Zebec's doing that with USD1. However, people like to tell me, who cares about Zebec cards or something like that, because again, it is integrating USD1 across its card suite. Well, we have to take a look at, for instance, when it comes to just in 2025, right, when it comes to their cards, there was a card volume of over 60 million, and also there was over 500,000 transactions processed. So that's pretty impressive, right? And then I take a look at how 19 chains were supported. And also on top of that, we have to consider there was over 20,000 that was issued, right, in terms of the cards. So in the grand scheme of things, is it really that bad? I mean, it's not the best, but I wouldn't say it's that bad. Now, people like to tell me, well, how is this reflecting upon ZBCN? It's not doing the best in terms of the charts. Yeah, I get that. I mean, it's still down by quite a lot. Still around 34 and a half times, actually lower than 10 cents. And 10 cents is, by the way, what I'm thinking about if, let's say, there was a hypothetical altcoin season. However, people like to say, again, it's so far from that. But we have to consider how all of this type of stuff would reflect later on in terms of the optics if there is an altcoin season. You know what I mean? It's like, for instance, a celebrity signing autographs. Sometimes it's a good look, it's good optics. And I think when it comes to something like this, I think it's good optics as well. Because I think later on, if there's an altcoin season or something like that, I think people usually take a look back at the track record of the project, right? They see what they did, they see the partnerships they had, the integrations or whatever. So that could reflect later on in a better way, I think, if there was hypothetically an altcoin season. So I think all of this type of stuff isn't useless. It's like, for instance, training for a marathon. Is everyone going to watch me train every single day? No, but it's going to reflect it later on. You know what I mean? It's going to show it later on in the competition. So I think when it comes to something like this, sure, it's not the biggest thing of all time, but it's kind of like the snowball effect, right? I think when it comes to Zebec, they're continuing to have integrations, partnerships, like what we saw in the case of Algorand, and, just kind of slowly building from there. And I think eventually it creates something more later in terms of the vibe, the energy, and kind of how the project is perceived. If a project is pretty massive, but it doesn't really have any partnerships or something like that, sometimes the optics is like, oh, it's just driven through a trend or something like that. But it doesn't feel like that to me in this case. And I don't think it would reflect that way either moving forward if, let's say, Zebec could continue on with its partnerships and integrations. However, people like to ask me, why did I, shave my head? I don't know. I just kind of felt like doing that randomly. I thought, why not, right? But you know what? The hair is going to grow back in like 2 weeks. It's like, whatever. It's not a big deal, I suppose. But yeah, besides that point, though, when it comes to 10 cents, we have to consider the market cap at that point would be around 9.7 billion, considering current circulating supply. A not massive figure by any means, in my perspective. Like, if that is a massive figure, like, how? The thing is this, Zebec is literally the 5th most popular project within global trade and finance within this space, in my perspective. If it could even maintain that, let's say, right? And let's say there is an altcoin season, considering the historical attention we've seen for projects within this space, I don't know if that seems too far-fetched, maybe. But again, this is the only time will tell type of scenario. Like, Dogecoin reached over 80 billion back in 2021. Like, this is just slightly over 10% of that, right? And Dogecoin reached that years ago. But this is just my mindset. However, when I take a look at Zebec as well, I think what I find pretty fascinating is the attention that Solana has been having, right? Or been getting, I should say. And I think that if Solana could really gain that momentum again, and let's say it could do something during an altcoin season, I think it would reflect positively upon something like Zebec, which does have an aspect of Solana. And, I think some of it could hypothetically maybe trickle down. And the thing is this, people like to ask me, how am I happy, right? They're asking me that question. Like, how am I personally happy seeing ZBCN around 34 and a half times lower than 10 cents as of right now? The reason why I'd be happier seeing that as opposed to 10 cents being like 10 times away only is because I'm looking to dollar cost average as of right now. So would I be happier if I'm dollar cost averaging into something that is around 34 and a half times lower than 10 cents or around 10 times lower than 10 cents? I'd be happier if it's around 34 and a half times because in theory, the lower something is, the ceiling could hypothetically be farther away, right? It doesn't mean it is, but it could be. This is my mindset. If I'm looking to dollar cost average, the lower it is temporarily, the happier I'd be because I am looking to dollar cost average. But I don't want it low forever though. Who would want that? But I'm just saying, like, temporarily, I don't mind. So yeah, I'm not concerned by what I'm seeing when it comes to Zebec. I still like it as a project. It still seems to be developing and doing things. I mean, sure, it's not going to be the most popular project of all time, but I don't expect it to be that way either. Like, not every single project needs to be the best, right? Does every single businessman need to be the next Jeff Bezos? Absolutely not. That's pretty difficult to achieve. That's a very intense sort of achievement. You know what I mean? It's not that easy, right? But it doesn't mean that someone needs to be like that to live in Manhattan Beach, for instance, in LA. No, I mean, a lot of people live there, right? Are they all Jeff Bezos? No, you know? So this is my perspective. Like, when it comes to Zebec, it doesn't need to be the biggest, but just because it is a project that's focused on a pretty popular niche, I would say, and it already kind of has that established popularity, even if it just hypothetically, let's say, goes to around like a $9.7 billion market cap for whatever reason, or like 10 cents, it's nothing that I would be like disappointed with. Like, how is that bad considering, Zebec isn't necessarily the biggest project out there and how it's not necessarily going to ever become the most popular out there, but it's still like nothing I'd complain about. Like ZBCN, okay, it's around 34 and a half times lower than 10 cents. But if I take a look at Bitcoin, for instance, it's not even 2 times lower than any point it's ever reached historically, right? Has Bitcoin ever reached 180 grand? No, it has not. We'll wait and see, but as of right now, it has not. Let alone like over 30 times or even over 10 times. Like Ethereum's not over 10 times lower than any price it's ever reached in history. This is just my mindset. So yeah, when it comes to something like ZBCN overall, I'm still holding and I'm just waiting. That's pretty much about it. But yeah, in the meantime, I just wanted to make this updated video because, they integrated something new. And if a project that is, something that I like, I'm a fan of, integrate something, I'll talk about it. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. I just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you have a very nice day, and stay tuned for more updates when it comes to Zebec. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next video.